Here's an accurate representation of what would happen to me if I was stranded in the middle of an ocean.
Oh my god, I'm stranded in the middle of the ocean. I can't swim. I don't know why I made it this far. I'm gonna die.
Yeah. What a morbidly cringy ending on my part. Oh well. Anyway, what is up everybody? Random Random Man here, bringing you my review for Adrift. Based on a true story, the plot basically follows a young couple played by Shailene Woodley and Sam Claflin as they get stranded in the middle of the Pacific Ocean after a hurricane and must find shore with no communication or navigation tools. Going into this movie, I had quite a bit of interest to see it, mainly for its two leads, Shailene Woodley and Sam Claflin. I'm a fan of both of these actors. I also forgot this movie was coming out so soon until I recently saw a few brief glimpses of one of the trailers. This movie also has a concept that could have some more intrigue to it, with it being part romance and part survival story, which is based on something that actually happened to this real-life couple. Starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Shailene Woodley as Tammy, a young woman with a carefree spirit who, as the movie's story begins, comes to Tahiti to basically try and find herself and figure out what she wants to do in the future. That is until she meets Sam Claflin's character, Richard, and these two have very good chemistry together. I totally bought them as a couple, and they work off of each other well, as they both have similar spirits and personalities that have them basically go on adventurous escapades together on this island. Woodley in particular is captivating in her performance, as she has some scenes where she acts alone and you can tell that there's a lot of searing emotion and determination within her to try to get out of this situation that she got herself into with Sam Claflin's Richard. And Claflin is good on his own as well. The thing is, he's out of commission for a lot of the scenes he is in, so it's not really the fault of his performance, but more so what happens to his character. But either way, I feel that Woodley and Claflin together and separately both give some commendable performances. The writing of this film and its overall narrative structure and how it wants to tell its story is very specific, as it's told with a lot of flashbacks. The movie opens with Woodley's Tammy getting out of the now wrecked boat that she was on with Claflin's Richard, and then it cuts to the beginning of the timeline of the story where she arrives in Tahiti, then later meets Richard, and then it cuts back and forth from there on out to where her and Richard are stranded in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and then we get more of their backstory interspliced in between. With a movie taking this kind of approach, it can be hit or miss a lot of the time, as one can argue that it can take a lot of the tension away knowing how we got into the situation already, and building up to it really doesn't give us a lot of care for our characters. But to me, I thought it mostly worked in us seeing back and forth how Tammy and Richard's relationship builds up to them getting into an unthinkable situation of being stranded in the middle of a vast ocean. It is shown and explained how Tammy and Richard got into this situation, as Richard is approached by an older couple that he knows as they propose for him to take their boat from Tahiti all the way to San Diego in exchange for $10,000 and 2 first-class plane tickets, which sounds like an attractive offer to Richard as he loves to sail. And for reference, Tahiti is an island in the southern Pacific Ocean, and that's quite a long journey to get to San Diego, California, which coincidentally that's where Tammy is from, and she got away from there in the first place to go to somewhere like Tahiti and is going back. But it's later shown in the movie what they think of all that, and of course they do go on this adventure. Of course, this ends up being catastrophic for the young couple as they encounter this huge hurricane that is apparently one of the biggest ever in recorded history, and then that's when they do get stranded, and then the movie constantly cuts back and forth in showing the relationship and how it builds up to them being stuck in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. With that concept, that really is just about it in terms of what the movie does with its story, as That's what I feel is the biggest issue of this movie when it comes to its narrative, as I feel it doesn't have much weight with its backbone. It's shallow, pun intended, and not really doing much other than showing us the romance that blossomed between Tammy and Richard and them trying to get out of this big storm and then eventually having this boat being wrecked in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, with Woodley's Tammy really taking over the picture and her figuring out what to do next. In that regard, this movie did remind me quite a bit of Gravity, which also had a female lead, Sandra Bullock, who is stranded in the middle of nowhere. For her, space, and she is trying to get back to civilization. Similar things apply with Shailene Woodley in Adrift, except this time she's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And this also is, now that I think about it, also similar to All Is Lost, starring Robert Redford. That film I haven't seen, but I'm aware that it's a similar kind of plot where he's in the high seas, in the middle of the vast ocean. Watching Woodley's Tammy do as much as she can to get back to shore was investing in part due to her absorbing performance, but also with how the movie looks. This movie is directed by, I'm gonna butcher this guy's name, Baltazar Kormacher. I apologize if I've messed that up, but he's previously directed Everest, which I haven't seen either, but that's another disaster movie of sorts. And with the way he directs Adrift, I was actually quite a bit surprised in how he focuses the narrative. The movie begins with this long take, this tracking shot of Woodley getting out of the now damaged ship. In fact, there's a few other uses of long takes in this movie, which I always enjoy seeing, as it shows to me either how well rehearsed the scene composition of these movies are, or how the director wants to get us into the situation that the characters are going through. And this would make sense for a movie like Adrift. There's also a bunch of uses of close-ups on characters' faces to get into the emotion and how they're really feeling inside. And just the overall look of this movie had me a bit in awe at certain points, as we are seeing a lot of water, and it makes for some scenes where the characters feel minuscule in terms of how big the ocean is. Like when Woodley is standing on the now damaged boat and we see the ocean all around her, with the cinematography in part being beautiful, lush. The editing of this movie was stringed together nicely as well, especially when it does come to the hurricane scene, which does not even show up until later on in the movie. I did notice that quite a bit of CGI was used for the hurricane sequence, yet I don't think this movie had that big of a budget in the first place, so it was impressive enough to see it play out with such intensity and the resources that the filmmakers had. The rest of the production design amounts to the actual boat being in the middle of the ocean and Woodley's character being in and around it, and the island of Tahiti itself, which looks gorgeous. So I have to give props to the filmmakers for having this film look as realistic as possible, as I think a lot of the underwater sequences did look not easy to shoot. I mean, shooting underwater is not easy in general, but with this movie's running time and pacing, when I looked up showtimes to see this movie on Fandango, it had listed the movie as being 120 minutes long, 2 hours, so it surprised me to see the movie end faster than I expected when I looked at my watch as the movie's end credits were starting. So I looked up the running time on IMDb, and there the movie is listed to be running at 96 minutes. So for future reference, this movie is 96 minutes long, as the movie is 90 minutes without credits. And I thought the pacing mostly ran well. Really, the only other thing that I would say I should address with the film has to do with a revelation towards the end. It's not really a twist, because the movie doesn't outright lie to us at the beginning of what's really going on, and it's something that will throw off some people, but at the same time, it was shown from the beginning that the movie was going in this kind of direction. It's only to those that haven't been really paying attention to this movie's narrative that it will catch them by, such surprise. But it's gonna be hit and miss with some people, I feel. Even though this is based on a true story, I don't know how accurate this movie is to what happened in real life to this couple, so I'll leave it at that. So I will say that all in all, I found Adrift to be an enjoyable watch. It is quick with its 96-minute running time, and I feel that it has some value with it given the nice chemistry that Shailene Woodley and Sam Claflin have together. Woodley's performance specifically being one of the better performances I've actually ever seen her give, and the overall sense of scope and scale with the movie being a romantic survival tale. There's not much more beneath the surface of this movie besides the concept that it does present, but for those of you who are fans of the two leads and or are otherwise interested in a survival tale, I feel that Adrift is a good one at that, and I recommend it. My final verdict for Adrift is 3.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Adrift, social media links in the description, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.